According to Reggie Fils-Aimé from Nintendo of America, the Nintendo Switch is performing at historic levels when it comes to attach rate of certain games and then obviously pushing revenue. Right now, he basically points out how it's not just about Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, pushing things this holiday season. He's also talking about games that are previously released that have an insane attach rate. He says, in terms of traditional attach rate, the Nintendo Switch is performing at historic levels. As we sit here today, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Mario Odyssey, each one did attaching at better than 50%, meaning each of these games in the United States, across the population of hardware, consume 1 out of every 2 consumers that bought those games. And we've never seen 50% attach rate to begin with any game. And seeing that across 3 different games coming up on our second holiday is completely unheard of. Later on, and this is in an article on Variety, Reggie had this to say about the revenue and all this stuff happening. He says, the Nintendo Switch here in the United States is generating a level of revenue per piece of hardware that we've never seen in our history. And so our consumers are engaged. They're buying software. They're playing software. As long as we continue to do this, we're going to have a very vibrant platform which will continue to attract the very best from the big third-party developers as well as the smaller independent developers. Now, what I take out of all of this is obviously 2017 just had some killer games, right? All 3 of the games he's talking about that have over a 50% attach rate here in the United States and pretty darn close to just worldwide are games that came out in 2017. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Mario Odyssey, and Breath of the Wild were all 2017 games. So I don't know what that says about 2017 outside of the fact that it was just a killer year for Switch. But what I do know in 2018 is if there's a title or 2 that have a chance at joining them at close to a 50% attach rate, that would be Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, naturally, and we'll have to wait and see how sales play out for that over time. Some of those games, like Breath of the Wild, have been on the market for 18 months. We're going to have to fast forward a year from here to kind of see where Ultimate sits, and maybe Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. Again, we don't really know what the long tail... We don't even know what the sales of that game really in general is in the United States, outside of some numbers during launch. So we'll have to wait and see how these games perform long haul. But I think if anything has an opportunity to hit that attach rate, it would be those, or obviously Pokemon next year. It would be insane if Fire Emblem and Animal Crossing could join that as well, and all of a sudden you have 5 or 6 games at a 50% attach rate. Now, obviously, I do think the longer we get into the life cycle of Switch, the smaller and smaller the attach rate for Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8, and Super Mario Odyssey is going to be, because as more and more must-have or more and more games come out that people want to own, they might not be as inclined to always pick up, a Mario Kart, a Zelda, or Mario Odyssey, which right now they seem to be picking up 2 of the 3. Even in Japan, when we saw the big sales for Smash come in, we also saw a massive boost for Zelda, Mario, Splatoon 2, because Splatoon 2 is pretty big in Japan, and then obviously Breath of the Wild, they all saw a big boost. And I don't know that that's going to necessarily be the case forever, right? Like, you fast forward, 2 years from now, I'm not sure that everyone who buys a Switch then is going to be picking up those games at the same rates they are now. And I suspect the rate's going to fall short, smaller and smaller. I mean, for it to continue, as an example, 50% attach rate, and remember, it's close to 50% just globally. When Switch hits 40 million, it would have to, Breath of the Wild, as an example, would have to move like 19 million units. And that's not something that I think is realistic. Maybe I'm underselling what Breath of the Wild can do long haul. It's obviously clear still selling today. No reason for price cuts, no reason for anything. But I don't know that that's always going to be the case. So we're just going to have to wait and see how these sales play out. What I do think is interesting, is when he talks about, is generating revenue per piece of hardware that they've never seen in our history. I think they're talking, or at least referencing to, the amount of games they are selling per system, in addition to obviously, ad revenue, eShop stuff. But let's just look at what Nintendo's, numbers, at least on their official website, currently say about the attach rate. And, well, the numbers don't necessarily back it up. at least the numbers pre this quarter. You see, heading into the third quarter of this year, Nintendo is reporting they have sold, or at least shipped 22.86 million Switch units worldwide, moving 111.1, pieces of software, which on average is about 4.8, if you want to round up, 5 games per system sold. So I'm actually curious if the number is higher in the U.S., because we've got to remember Reggie Fils-Aimé deals strictly with the U.S., and we don't really have U.S. numbers outside of the fact that we do know that Nintendo Switch has sold 8.2 million through Cyber Monday just in the U.S., but we don't know the software. It's possible the software attach rate in the United States could be at 10 games for all we know, but and this isn't clear if they're counting. Not that they're not counting digital sales, but is this also including indie sales in that mix? There's a lot of unknown factors about how Nintendo is tallying their software and hardware sales. Because honestly, the 5 is a little bit under what Wii U is doing, or a little bit ahead of what Wii U is doing. Where Wii U sold 13.56 million units, but only 102.53 million units of software. So Switch is ahead of that pace, but not by what I would say is a significant margin, and certainly nowhere near the Wii, with its 101.63 million units sold and 920 million pieces of software. Obviously, like a 9-to-1 attach ratio, which is historic. I mean, it's absolutely historic to have a 9-to-1 attach ratio. So I don't really know, obviously, what the figures say for the U.S., but I do say that they're obviously happy. And they're happy that these are all $60 products, of course. Like when you talk about things like DS had a better attach ratio, although not compared to Wii. It's the best attach ratio they've had basically in the history of their handhelds. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked at all of this in general. What I also think is interesting is Nintendo actually did something. I just noticed this while I was checking the numbers. Nintendo did something on their official financial sheet that I don't think they've ever done before. They're actually giving us the hardware and software totals for all of their legacy systems. So, as an example, the family computers /NES sold 61.91 million units with 500 million pieces of software sold. I don't remember this being listed before. The Super Famicom computers /SNES sold 49 million with 379 million pieces of software sold. The N64 32.93 with 224. The GameCube at 21.75 with 208. And here's the thing, you could see that downward trend until all of a sudden they hit Wii with 100 million. And if you're curious about the Game Boy, I mean, the OG Game Boy /Game Boy Color had 118 million with 500 million plus pieces of software. Game Boy Advance had 81. And obviously we know the DS blew up to 154. And then obviously the 3DS is currently the lowest selling of Nintendo's handhelds of all time. That's what kind of sucked about the Wii U and 3DS generation, is that it's not just that Nintendo had the lowest selling home console they've ever released. They also had the lowest selling 3DS system, but man, have I gotten off track. I guess the general point here is that Switch is doing good. It's doing really, really good. And to have so many titles, 3 of them at 50% attach rate is just, as Reggie said, it's completely unheard of. It's historic. And we'll see if those historic levels maintain forever. But what is clear is that those games are probably going to end up becoming the best selling in those IPs' history. I mean, the Breath of the Wild is already the highest selling Zelda game ever created. Ever. Like, I'm not talking about if you count in all the re-releases and remasters and you add those all together. Obviously, it's going to be a higher, sales, but I think that's not a great way to compare sales. I think you got to compare, like, say, what did Ocarina of Time sell on the N64 compared to what Breath of the Wild sold on Switch. Or if you want to take Twilight Princess on Wii and GameCube and add it together, then, because if you do that, then that's the highest selling Zelda game before this. So, okay, then add the Wii U and the Switch sales together, and it's even higher. So, I honestly think that this is astounding. I think Odyssey is well on its way to being the best-selling Mario game. 3D Mario game, by the way. I don't want to talk about best-selling Mario game of all time. It's a long ways off from what those old-school Mario games were doing. Heck, it's a long ways off from New Super Mario Brothers on Wii and DS, but you guys let me know what you think about this data down in the comments below, what Reggie had to say about the attach rate. Do you care about the attach rate? Obviously, a lot of us might not care about the revenue aspects of things. I know that there's been some talks lately on my channel, some comments. Nate, why are you always talking about sales and revenue? I just find this stuff fascinating. It doesn't directly impact me, usually, but I do find it fascinating. And then on top of this, seeing that 3 of my favorite games on this platform have more players than I I mean, I never expected this. Maybe my expectations for Switch are just blown completely out of the water. Maybe this is going to be a north of 100 million unit seller, this system. I honestly am not sure how to predict Switch anymore. Everything they release seems to just perform better than ever before. Odyssey's on pace to be the best-selling 3D Mario of all time. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, a port, is on pace to be the best-selling Mario Kart of all time. Breath of the Wild's already the best-selling Zelda game of all time. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the best-selling Xenoblade game of all time. Super Mario Party was the fastest-selling Mario Party game out of the gates. Mario Tennis Aces was the fastest-selling Mario Tennis game out of the gates. Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee was not obviously up at the fastest of the fastest, but it was like middle of the pack with its release. But then Super Smash Bros. Ultimate comes out and just said, you know what? We're just going to take the record books, rip it up, and become like one of the fastest-selling Nintendo games ever created, if not the fastest once we get the worldwide numbers. So I'm not sure what to expect of this Switch. It seems no matter what Nintendo does, no matter how much effort they put in a game, or lack of effort in some cases, it just seems to do well. I think Labo is probably the only thing that maybe that and 1-2 Switch, although 1-2 Switch has sold over 1 million. So maybe Labo is the one thing that maybe isn't performing the way Nintendo wants. But everything else, I mean, Octopath Traveler came out, and it's a great game. I love Octopath Traveler, but like, is it, you know, is the hype for it maybe overblown a little bit? I don't know. But we were so desperate for content at the time. Maybe it felt like it was a bigger deal than it really deserved. By the way, I'm not throwing shade at Octopath Traveler. Fantastic. I got to finish playing before I can really have my full judgment on it. I can't even think of a criticism of the game right now. It's like the perfect sort of RPG for me, but I grew up on those kind of RPGs, so... All right, I think this video's gone on a lot longer than I initially planned, but you know that happens when you're passionately talking about Nintendo. That being said, I'm Nathaniel Rufflejans from Nintendo Prime. Be sure to enter our Nintendo Switch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate giveaway down in the description. Only requirements: you're subscribed to the channel. It's a 50,000 subscriber giveaway. So hey, the closer we get to 50K, as soon as we nail 50K that day, we will be, unless it happens at like 11:59 and I'm sleeping. Obviously, it'll happen the next day then. We will be announcing the winner of that giveaway. Otherwise, like this video if you like it, subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you in the next one.